Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Wellness for All webinar. And today we'll be looking at the science behind weight management. Within our Wellness Charter, this sits within our physical health domain, but also has impacts across other areas as well. With regards to today's webinar, what are we going to be looking at? Well, our speakers are going to talk about how food temptation, our appetite, exercise and sleep all affect our weight. They're going to share their knowledge about how we can improve our lifestyles with very simple and achievable goals. So I'd like to introduce Lauren and Steve. Lauren is a mobility specialist and practicing yoga teacher. She's passionate about sharing her knowledge about how to form healthy habits and holds several personal training qualifications. Steve is a certified nutritionist and has been working with clients to help them feel better for over 10 years with some really great results. Steve has experience with athletes on the world stage as well as the general population. So welcome, Lauren and Steve. Thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to share with us.
Cool, happy to be here. Okay, so I'll take it from here. Let's go to the next slide. And while we're taking this time, I'll just introduce myself a little bit more. So as was mentioned, my name's Steve. I'm the head of nutrition at Goalmaster. I was previously a professional musician and I became fascinated with nutrition to help me through a chronic illness. That passion led to me wanting to help other people, and that's why I'm here today. So today I'm going to be talking about how we really lose weight and how to make it simpler. We'll just skip to the next slide, which is the first one. And it asks the question, what is healthy anyway? Which is kind of a good question. Now, if you've ever Googled anything to do with diet or nutrition, you'll know that it's a minefield out there. Trying to eat in a way that's best for your health can seem mind-bogglingly complex. So is the best diet like low carb, or is it low fat, or vegan, or Mediterranean? Well, there are 100 different possibilities that you've probably all heard of or known someone that's tried. So should you eat 3 meals a day or 6? And is it okay to have a jam donut or a G&T now and then, right? The device is different everywhere you look. So we're going to talk about what really matters and gives you some insight into what to actually do. Because what's more predictive of good or bad health isn't necessarily the exact foods you eat. It might actually be more to do with your body weight, or more importantly, your body composition. So as obesity and overweight have increased in Europe, so have the cases of about every disease or health issue you can think of. So getting or staying lean, therefore, is the best use of your time, and the best way to affect your body weight is through your diet. So if we go to the next slide, that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay, so you've probably got a handle on your bank balance in the sense that you know roughly what comes in and what goes out, and kind of like how that all works. And your weight works the same way. So losing, gaining, or staying the same weight is the difference between your energy incomings and outgoings, to put it into that kind of financial term. There's a lot of confusion about this, a ton of confusion about this, but it's actually really, really simple. And the reason it's confusing is because a lot of people who try to sell diets or sell lifestyles, they want to simplify this to the point where it's just missing out a certain type of food or missing out a certain type of like whatever to make this work, right? But it's not. If you take in more energy than your body has used, that extra energy will be stored for later. And the easiest place to store it is in your fat tissue. That's how it works. When you haven't taken in enough calories to support your daily needs, your body will find the energy from somewhere else, right? Usually, again, your fat stores. And doing this consistently will result in weight loss, right? That's how it works. And if you consistently match the energy you use during the day with the energy you burn, your body weight won't change, right? Because your body won't have to find that extra energy for anywhere else. But even if it's the balance of energy in to energy out and nothing else that determines if you lose or gain weight, losing fat isn't as easy as simply eating fewer of the foods you like. It's a lot more complicated than that, which is why these companies and these people try and just make it into one bullet point. So losing and maintaining your weight in a sustainable way means controlling your habits and lifestyle. We're going to look at that now. So we'll go on the next slide. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the food environment. Okay, so did you know that the probability of eating a snack goes up 69% if it's 6 feet away from you rather than 17 feet? Right, so if it's on the desk in front of you or really close, you're way more likely to eat it than if it is on the other side of the room. This is the power of your food environment. This is the first thing that we're going to really look at in practical terms. So your food environment is simply the food and food reminders that surround you in everyday life. And it's a big deal in how it affects how much you eat. So I'm not just talking about the food that's lying about where you are. Anything that makes you think of food or prompts you to eat is part of your food environment. When you take into account that there are like tasty treats and tasty food around every street corner, and the fact that we can see at least 20 adverts for food every day, the issue is everywhere. So that's important to remember. Your food environment isn't just, you know, what's right in front of you. It's the environment that we live in all day long, right? And it's designed to make you eat more. So over the years, researchers pointed to some interesting things where the food environment is concerned. And they do a lot of research on this because it's easy to study and it's kind of super interesting. So researchers like to geek out, they like this stuff. So you're more than 27% more likely to eat sweets if they're on your desk than if they're just out of arm's reach. And by just out of arm's reach, I mean, you just can't quite reach them. That's the difference, like, between it. So if it's just on your desk right in front of you, 27% more likely than if you just have to move just a little bit to get them. We eat more snacks when we've seen adverts for them on television without actually realizing we're doing it. So subliminal sort of advertising makes you want that food. And we eat twice as many chocolates if they're kept in clear containers on our desks rather than if they're kept in opaque ones. Right? So if you can see it, you're going to eat it, compared to if you can't, you might not. And this research all points to one thing. If it's in clear view, or if we're reminded of it, we're much more likely to eat it, and that leads to weight gain. So hearing me say this stuff can make you feel like you're doomed to be a slave to the food environment, but that's not the case. There are a couple of simple things that you can do. So as alluded to when we were talking about that research, number one is to keep things out of sight. So if you imagine at the end of the day, end of work, you come home, you walk straight into your kitchen, and everywhere there are kind of like tasty, snacky foods that you want to eat. What's going to happen when you're like cooking dinner, instead of going home and just getting the food out of the fridge, making dinner, you'll probably start to eat all the other snack things around you whilst you're cooking food. A lot of people do that. Or instead of actually eating the dinner that you had planned in your head, you'll start to just eat other stuff, which maybe got too many calories in it. And the second thing that you can do is avoid temptation at work. So don't have food on your desk. Don't have food in the drawers near your desk. If you've got a fridge in your office that you put stuff in, try not to put snack foods in there. Try to just only have the things that you're going to have for lunch or whatever. Or if you want to eat snacks throughout the day, that kind of stuff, instead of putting chocolate bars in there or sweets, try to change it for fruit or something like that. Two simple things, but two super, super, super powerful things. If you can do them, you can really, your food environment is in your control, so you can do more to control it. All right, so we're going to go to the next slide. We're going to talk about appetite. So recently, within like the last year, researchers did a really important study. And the thing is with research, often we think that we know the answer to something. We don't really have that kind of proof. We've got like an idea or a hypothesis, but we don't really have it proven. And sometimes a study comes along which really, really helps to tell us what we kind of already knew. All right, so this is one of these studies. So people in this study were given two diets over time. One diet was made up of whole, unprocessed foods, so think like a potato, and the other diet was highly processed, so think potato chips. Processed just means it's been changed in some way into something else, right? So despite one diet being processed and the other being unprocessed, the two different diets contain the same amount of protein, carbohydrates, fat, and fiber. So all the macronutrients, everything was exactly the same. But one was processed and one was unprocessed, as natural as possible. The other one was kind of changed. And people simply ate either diet for a few days at a time while stopping until they felt full, and the number of calories they consumed were recorded. And the key thing about this study is, without realizing, when eating that highly processed diet, the people in the study ate about 500 calories more per day than when they were eating the unprocessed foods. So they didn't realize they were doing that. They ate until they were exactly the same level of fullness, but they consumed 500 calories more from the processed diet. So let's talk about appetite a little bit. Appetite is the key signal that drives you to eat, and it's based on two things: how much of food you're eating right now and how much energy your body has in stored fat. right? So if you're eating enough calories to cover all your energy needs, your brain should tell you when to stop eating. It should be like, okay, we're good, let's stop now. But that doesn't seem to happen in modern society, where overeating and obesity is such worldwide struggles. And the reason for that is that appetite isn't just as simple as eating until you're full. If you want to lose or maintain your weight, the foods you pick do really, really matter. So, I mentioned before that weight loss is all about energy in versus energy out, but it doesn't mean to say that we can just have a diet of, Snickers bars and lose weight. You could, but it's going to be really hard to stick to. So how do you control your appetite so that you can eat fewer calories without thinking about it, or at least reduce the number of calories that we're eating? And here are some simple steps. So practical stuff. Pick foods that are high in protein, like lean meat or fish or lentils or beans if you're a vegetarian. Protein as a type of food is one of the most filling, so it sends a message to your brain to stop eating sooner, right? So that's a good idea to include that in the food that you eat. Try to eat whole foods most of the time over processed ones. So we've just talked about that in the study. That kind of makes sense to us now. Think apples rather than apple sauce, right? Eat mostly plain foods. It's not very exciting, but you're much less likely to overeat if you stick to the basics rather than foods that are jazzed up with sauces and things like that. Imagine a bowl of white rice, right? Cooked rice, and you were given a spoon and you had to eat it until you were full. You'd get bored. I'd get bored after like a few bites. But imagine putting something like sweet chili sauce on it or something like that. Once I've done that, if I douse that rice and that stuff, I can probably eat literally 10 times as much without feeling full. That's kind of how appetite works. Lastly, eat lots of vegetables. They add a ton of bulk, which tells your brain like, okay, your stomach's full now, stop eating, but they don't have as many calories. And that's kind of it for appetite. So let's go across to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about the next thing. So here's a question for you. Have you ever felt hungry and found something to eat only to feel even more hungry afterwards? Right? Has that happened to you? Because it's happened to me. And maybe it was the pastry that you had for breakfast, or it was like the mac and cheese that you had at dinner where you wanted to stop eating, but you just couldn't. And while it might seem counterintuitive, this is the result of food reward. So your brains aren't too dissimilar to that of your Paleolithic ancestors, and they're designed to help us survive. And since history began as humans' biggest danger has been starvation. For that reason, your brain is like really, really equipped to deal with it. So your brain's designed to work out how many calories are in the foods you eat really, really quickly. And once you eat something that's loaded with fat and sugar and overall energy, a complex set of reward systems in your brain are set off. Because your brain's trying to help you out. It doesn't know that you're in this modern sort of lifestyle. It still thinks that we're in a situation where we might starve any second. And so it has all these complex reward systems. And the reward system works like this. So it helps you remember where you ate the food so that you associate that place with like tasty food in the future, and you're driven to go there more often. And you can tell this when you're walking around. If you're walking around, your brain sometimes kind of telling you like where the food is on the high street. You'll find yourself in front of your favorite place more often than not. And it's because without really realizing it, you're kind of being led there. Your brain's trying to help you out, but it's not really helping that much. And it makes you like the food more. Have you ever wondered why you love your favorite food so much? It's because your brain wants it that way. It knows that it's got loads of calories in there, and it drives you to eat it, right? And it does the same thing. This is like an interesting little side fact here. Drugs that we have in kind of every day affect the reward systems in the same way. They kind of trick your brain into thinking that these are high calorie rewarding things, and it has the same level of reward systems going on for it. So caffeine, for example, is a drug, but it affects the brain in the same way that a highly kind of calorific food might. So if you remember the first time that you drank coffee, right, when you're a little kid, you drink it and you think, that's disgusting, it's so bitter, it's horrible. Like, why do adults drink this stuff? But your brain soon realizes that there's a drug in there, right? There's caffeine, and it wants it. So nowadays, as an adult, when you smell coffee, you're like, and when you taste it, you think it tastes great. It's because your brain's made it that way. It's made it taste really good. And it does the same thing with food, right? And it also, another thing it does, it teaches you to associate the smell of food with contentment and happiness. It actually brings back memories of when you were in a really happy place. If you eat a pizza or something, it'll bring up a memory of when you shared one of those pizzas and felt good about it. It'll generally make you feel good. and it enhances that memory. So you always think of a time where you ate that delicious food as being the best time. So it really, really tries to drive you to eat these things. That's what I'm kind of saying here in a nutshell. And this isn't just about sugar. I want to make this point again as kind of a side point. Lots of people think that they have an issue with sugar or they're addicted to sugar, something like that. The brain doesn't really care that much about sugar. It cares about calories overall, especially the combination of fat and sugar. So when they do polls or they do these kind of studies with people who think that they're addicted to sugar or really love sugar, and then they get them to rank their foods from their favorite to their least favorite, right down at the bottom, the least favorite are things that are almost pure sugar, like boiled sweets, those kind of things. People really aren't that interested. You've probably never been at home and gone into the cupboard and taken out a bag of sugar to eat it because you don't want to eat sugar that much. But way at the top are things like chocolate bars, galaxies, dairy milk, those kind of things. It's the potent mix of like fat and carbohydrates that really drives your brain to set off these reward signals. So your brain's trying to help. It's just a bit out of touch with the modern era. And access to food has never been easier. Hyperpalatable foods are everywhere. But the fix for this, instead of giving you a set of practical points, the fix for this is to understand it. There aren't many steps that you can take or processes that you put in place, but knowing why you want to eat more of certain foods is a good thing because it puts the ball in your court, right? So with me, for instance, if I eat a pastry or something like that for breakfast, the only thing that I want to do is eat 10 more of them. But that's okay, because I know what's going on with food reward. I know what my brain's up to, and I can choose then to either eat it and be like, yeah, I'm probably going to feel pretty hungry after this, but it was worth it. Or I can choose to ignore it and just be like, this is going to make me feel hungry. I'm going to eat something else, which is a bit more plain, a bit less rewarding, because I don't want to feel hungry today. It gives you that choice. So understanding that you can eat a 1,500 calorie pizza and still be driven to eat more is liberating, because understanding a behavior gives us control over it. Okay, so when you put these three things together, when you think about your food environment, trying to control your food environment. You think about your appetite and how that's affected by the food choices that you make, and you think about food reward in the sense that some foods are way more rewarding than each other, than another one. And if I want to lose weight or maintain my weight, my foods that I pick are really important. And then if we remember back to the very beginning, the overall sort of overarching idea that weight loss, weight gain, it's about how many calories you burn compared to how many you consume, then we've got control over that situation. Then we've got a starting place to create a diet that works kind of for you, rather than one of the million diets that I mentioned at the top where you can kind of pick and try and follow. So tailor it to yourself, use these things, think about these kind of situations, and that's it. Okay, those are my slides. So we finished now talking about diet. We can skip to the next slide. And Lauren's going to take over talking more about the exercise side of things. Lauren, over to you.
Great, thank you, Steve. I'm sorry if you can hear the rain in the background. Let's just hope it's a little meditative for you all if you can hear it. So like Steve said, he's touched upon the nutritional perspective, and I'm now going to talk about the role that exercise and a little bit of stress management play within that whole picture. So as it says on the slide, regular exercise improves factors linked to cardiovascular health, which results in lower blood pressure, healthier cholesterol levels, and better blood sugar regulation. And not only that, but including some regular strength training in your routine can increase bone density and reduce the risk of osteoporosis. And this is particularly beneficial for menopausal women, as osteoporosis risk actually increases following the menopause. So just as Steve sort of touched upon regarding nutrition, the same goes for exercise, that there isn't one best routine or program. What is important is to find the energy balance that works optimally for you. And whatever that is, it has to be something that you can keep up with consistently for the long term. And I think we all know that exercise is a very important thing to include in our lives if we want to stay healthy long term. But I also know that it can be a little bit confusing when there's so much conflicting information out there. And we have limited time today, so I obviously can't give you all bespoke personal advice. But I thought I would talk to you about some simple steps that you can take to try and increase your energy output within your probably quite busy and stressful lives, and how just with a little extra effort, you can make sure that you don't like spend your retirement sitting in a chair, and that you just feel better on a daily basis and manage to maintain your weight. So I wanted to start off by talking about probably the most underrated tool that we have at our disposal, and that is NEAT. So if we just move on to the next slide, NEAT is essentially just an acronym for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and all it means is any physical movement in your life that isn't planned exercise or sports, or sleeping, breathing, eating. So simply anything from taking the stairs rather than standing on the escalator or cleaning your house. And modern day living, especially the last year due to COVID, has meant that the average person's NEAT has decreased substantially. And the thing is, keeping your NEAT up is free, it's simple to implement, it has a low injury risk, and it can contribute a lot more to your total calories burned than, say, going to the gym 2 times a week, or, since we're talking about current situations, doing a HIIT workout in your living room 2 times a week. And I'm not implying that training in the gym isn't necessary, and I will touch upon that later. But I just think people need to be a little bit more aware that movement outside of planned exercise needs just as much, if not more, consideration. Because the amount of hours we spend outside of the gym or outside of planned training far outweighs the time we spend inside the gym. So what can we do? And I know, probably I'm going to get an eye roll here, but standing up can make a difference. It really can. So usually when I do these webinars, I say stand on public transport instead of sitting, take the stairs instead of the escalator. Now, I know a lot of people won't be traveling right now, but that doesn't mean that you can't stand up to make a work call or, you know, run up and down your stairs a couple times a day, because daily steps add up. So usually I tell my clients to aim for 10K steps a day. If that seems like totally beyond the realms and you're not anywhere near that, just try and add on a little bit to what you're doing now. Now it's hammering it down outside where I am with rain, so I know it probably doesn't seem very appealing. But again, it's kind of something that you've just got to factor in if you want to manage your weight long term. So we also have, like I said before, more boring things, unless you're a clean freak like me. So cleaning the house can burn a load more calories than you might think. Playing with your kids, if you're stuck at home with your kids, you know, playing with them is a great thing to do. And like I said, these things might sound trivial, but just like compound interest, the cumulative effect across months or years can be huge. And while seemingly small, making the effort to change your daily habits by adding more of this NEAT, alongside what Steve was talking about, so reducing your overall caloric intake, will create the foundation for long-lasting weight loss and health success. So if we just move on to the next slide, now that we've finished talking about NEAT, I'm going to quickly touch upon strength training and why it's important. So I know maybe when people talk about strength training or weight training, some people might have an image of like a Popeye type with a muscle vest on, grunting their way through a workout. But the benefits of strength training go far beyond that of aesthetics. So lifting is really important as we're aging. Strength training can increase your bone density and, like I said, reduce the risk of osteoporosis. Not only that, but it will enhance the rest of your fitness routine. So having stronger muscles will equal stronger cycling or running or swimming, along with better performance in any activities that you do. And having strong muscles and joints will also help to reduce your rate of injuries and fatigue. And also, number 3, it says here, counteract the effects of weight loss. So all that means basically is to lose weight, like Steve was saying, we need to create a calorie deficit, either by burning calories with exercise or eating fewer calories, or preferably both. So as we lose weight, we often lose muscle mass as well. And as it's vitally important to maintain muscle mass as we age, we need to balance weight loss with strength training to maintain muscle, because we don't want to lose any muscle mass, even if that means that the weight loss is a little slower. So I just want to say, It doesn't have to take a lot of time. Start with 2 days a week, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. That can provide enough muscle stimulation to improve strength and balance in pretty much most adult men and women. And I know most of you probably aren't able to get to a gym at the moment. So just be aware that these results don't require lifting crazy heavy loads that increase the risk of injury or overuse. As long as you exercise the major muscle groups and challenge yourself more than you're used to, you will see results. And like I said, I know with gyms closed and motivation, or I'm seeing this within my clients, motivation is at kind of an all-time low. Exercise might seem like a huge undertaking. So whether that's going for a walk or trying to lift some weights or doing some body weight exercises. But I just want to remind you that moving your body and feeling good in your body has a profoundly positive effect on your mind. And that's kind of like a never-ending cycle where if you feel good in your head, you generally do more things that feel better in your body. And it's just a really nice, positive kind of circular loop. So if we just move on to the next slide. The take home of that little exercise portion is just look to increase your NEAT. So I've said there, maybe even get a step tracker, because realistically you can only change what you can measure. It's very hard to guesstimate how many steps you get in a day. So if you can track it, amazing. Aim for 10K steps, but obviously just whatever you're doing right now, try and add on to that daily, weekly, wherever you can. Number 2 is include some weight bearing exercise. Now, like I said, with gyms closed, that can be quite tough. But you know, if you've got some weights at home or you can do some body weight circuits, even better. Just make sure you know what you're doing. And then start with what you can consistently manage long term. And once that gets habitual and doable, then add more. So now let's move on to the next slide. I know it's a lot of information, but I did just want to touch upon sleep and stress and how they have to be factored in when thinking about weight management. So sleep is like putting fuel in a car. Without it, you quite simply can't perform or concentrate as long with daily tasks at work and within your training. So like it says on this slide, sleep can boost recovery, performance, improve cognitive function, boost your sex drive. It can also help you stick to your diet and your calorie deficit. That's why these things are so important to kind of factor in as a, I know this is a bit of an eye roll word as well, but as a holistic kind of programming. So sleep is not only essential for basic functioning, but also for optimal health. It plays a critical role in brain function, in appetite regulation, and the functioning of your immune, hormonal, and cardiovascular systems. So ideally, to get all these benefits from all those things, you should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And I know that can sound like a lot to some people, and you might be one of those people like I used to be, where you think, oh, you know, I can get by with 5 hours, 6 hours, whatever it might be. But the difference between getting by and thriving are 2 entirely different things. So if you are someone who struggles with your sleep, I'm going to come to some things a little bit later that might help you out there, just little take homes. So if we just move on to the next slide, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about stress and stress management. And realistically, stress is something that we should always be looking at managing. But I feel like especially lately with everything that's going on in the world, it's more important than ever to touch upon it. So the human body is designed to experience stress and react to it. Stress can be positive, so maybe getting a promotion, being given greater responsibilities, or it can be negative. So when you face continuous challenges without relief or relaxation between those challenges, you can become overworked and stress-related tension can build. And stress can affect everything. We're basically talking about that holistic thing. So stress can affect sleep, exercise, your nutrition, your lifestyle, your work, your libido, your physical performance. So pretty much most things. And we often don't realize just how much stress is affecting us almost until it's too late. So our internal communication systems go haywire and burnout can happen. So what can we do to mitigate this negative stress? Well, the things I've already talked about. So exercise is one of the most important things you can do to combat stress. And it might sound contradictory, but putting physical stress on your body through exercise can actually relieve mental stress. It will help to release endorphins, which are chemicals that improve your mood, and it will also lower your body's stress hormones and help to optimize your hormone profile. So like I said before, these two things kind of work in tandem. They help each other out, and they generally make you feel better, and they're both really good weight management techniques. Steve actually touched upon this one earlier, caffeine. So caffeine, like Steve said, is a stimulant. It's found in coffee, tea, chocolate, energy drinks, and high doses can increase anxiety and stress. Now, people often have different thresholds for how much caffeine they can tolerate. And although many studies show that coffee can be healthy in moderation, it's not for everyone. If you notice that it makes you jittery or anxious, maybe just consider cutting back. And again, as we're talking about this holistic thing, that would also help you with optimizing your sleep. Now, I wouldn't be a yoga teacher if I didn't move on to saying, maybe try a yoga class as a stress management technique. I think we need to go on to the next slide. Sorry, I forgot to say that before. But maybe take a yoga class. So yoga has become a popular method of stress relief and exercise among all age groups. And while yoga styles differ, most share a common goal, which is to join the body and mind. And yoga primarily does this by increasing body and breath awareness. So in general, the benefit of yoga for stress and anxiety seems to be related to its effect on your nervous system and your stress response. Now, remember, this part I'm talking about is more about stress management and getting yourself to a place where you feel good and good enough to work on your maybe sort of poor habits. So when I'm talking about yoga as a stress management tool, I'm not talking about bending yourself into a pretzel or getting your leg behind your head. That's not the goal. You would be looking for a class that allows you just to feel grounded and safe and realize that you're okay in the moment. Maybe something that pushes you a little, just to realize that you're stronger than you think. But just trying to reduce your stress levels so that everything's in its right place and everything's kind of working together in a positive way. So another stress management technique I wanted to touch upon is just any kind of deep breathing. Now, mental stress activates your sympathetic nervous system. It's kind of signaling your body to go into that fight or flight mode. And deep breathing exercises can help activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which controls the relaxation response. And there are several different types of deep breathing exercises. You've got diaphragmatic breathing, abdominal breathing, belly breathing, paced respiration. There's a lot to choose from. I have a personal favorite breathing exercise that I use when I need to find kind of quick relief from any feelings of anxiety or maybe a thought spiral I can't switch off from. I also use it before important meetings or presentations if I'm feeling jittery. And I know I don't have time to show you it, but if you are interested in looking it up, it's just called alternate nostril breathing or Nadi Shodhana. And it's just a really good thing to do. I use it quite often. And also maybe just touching upon what Steve said, it might be a good thing to do before you're going to reach for your snack that maybe you don't reach for, because it just generally calms you down and makes you feel a little bit better. Now, if none of these tips are for you, if you just have been hearing them and thinking, you know, none of those really float my boat, there are some other really small steps that you can do to manage your stress levels and therefore pretty much usually improve your sleep patterns. So you can go for some really quick fixes. So maybe do the blue light filter on your phone, especially before you're going to bed, or maybe get some of those blue light blocking glasses if you're someone who works on your laptop till late at night. Maybe if you are someone who looks at your phone a lot before bed, before sleep, try reading a book. I know, nothing revolutionary, but it's a really good suggestion, and maybe sometimes you just need a reminder. Or, you know, some relaxing music. If you're someone who journals, maybe journaling, just anything that can get you into a slightly more relaxed and happy state. Now, I know I've said it multiple times. I know these things sound trivial, or maybe it's nothing new that you're hearing. But honestly, it's nothing new and it's nothing revolutionary because these things work. I think sometimes we just need a little push or a reminder to implement them in our lives. You know, fancy new things that Steve said that are advertised for, they're sometimes appealing, but realistically, the reason that people keep on coming back to try and learn about weight management is because those quick fixes don't work. And if you had just implemented these small things into your life, the compound interest would pay off ultimately in the end. Now, I usually say also as a stress management technique, spend time with friends and family. I feel like that one's not quite applicable now, especially if your family are a source of stress because you've been living with them all throughout lockdown. But I hope that's not the case. And if it's not, then just spending time, like I said, playing with your kids or going for a walk with the family, that will help you get that NEAT up, as well as giving you some, positive benefits from spending time with people you love. You can make sure you take your annual leave just so you're having good rest time. Here in the UK, we're still allowed to go for a walk with one person. So again, you can get your NEAT up while spending time with family and friends. That will be really good for your stress management. So if we just move on to the next slide, might even be the last slide. I just wanted to recap everything I've talked about today, as I know it's a lot of information all at once. So not on this slide, but in the beginning, we talked about the ways you can increase your NEAT. So taking the stairs, running up and down the stairs, going for a walk, anything, cleaning the house, playing with kids. I touched upon trying to include some weight-bearing exercise. If that's something that's available for you, would be fantastic. And start with what you can consistently manage long-term and then move forward. And just to recap, the second bit, again, touched upon the importance of regular exercise, maybe looking at reducing your caffeine intake if you think that might be something you need to look at. Take a yoga class for the stress management benefits. Maybe try some deep breathing or meditation or whatever thing works for you as a stress management tool. And then, like I said, the blue light stuff, blue light blocking glasses, reading a book, they're really quick takeaways that you could use almost instantly. And yeah, that is all from me for now. I think we're going to move on to a Q&A, so that should be a nice, interesting one. So I will pass back over to Tracy.
Thank you. That was extremely interesting. I always have a pen and paper ready for the webinars, and almost haven't got enough room on my piece of paper there to just write down some of those thoughts and ideas. And already got some questions come in, and if anybody else has got some questions, please do drop them into the chat and I'll share them with Steve and Lauren. So if it's all right with you, and I'll read out a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll start with quite understandable this person's concerned about visiting the shops at the moment, to buy groceries. They don't want to be exposed to the virus more than they need to be. So there's that temptation of, let's order a takeaway because it feels like a convenient solution, but they know it's not healthy. I suppose you've seen a fair bit of this over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you want to take that one, Steve? Or?
Yeah. So if you want to try and avoid, the thing is that you can also order food from supermarkets, just the same as you can order food like delivery and that kind of thing. If you don't want to go out because you don't want to go to supermarkets that are busy, fine, they'll bring it to you. So you can do that. So I would look at those things first. I'd also look at just what you're ordering from, like when you get takeaways and stuff, because if you're ordering it because you're stressed out and you want to overeat because you want to eat something that's really nice because lockdown's boring and stressful and generally rubbish, and that makes you feel better for that moment, then I would address those things, because those things are different, and that's what a lot of people have been going through. We just want to make ourselves feel better because everything's a bit rubbish right now. And so address that if that's the case, and think about what foods you could eat, what is actually quite nice, but maybe I'm not going to overeat it as much, based on everything that I talked about before. And then two, if it's just because you don't want to go to supermarkets, just have a look at getting things delivered to you. All the major supermarkets are doing it. You can do that, and you can stay as safe as possible. So look, that would be my couple of takeaways from that.
I would also say, actually, I don't know if it's helpful, but I haven't been going to the supermarket loads, but what I have been doing a lot is just huge amounts of food preparation. So I have food in my fridge that, you know, if I really can't be bothered to cook on a night, which to me happens all the time, I have quite busy days, and I know it can feel a bit overwhelming at the end of the day to do a big cook. But if you've already, you know, you can do a big order from the supermarket, you can cook up something big. I'm not going to suggest something because I'm vegan, so I doubt it'll be very interesting for you guys to hear my black bean recipe. But just cooking a really big amount of food and having it in the fridge, healthy food preferably, then it's there to reach for. And even if you're feeling maybe a little bit, you know, stressed and emotional, and you want a nicer, more fatty, caloric thing, if it's in the fridge, you're generally going to eat it. If you're anything like me, I hate throwing food away. So I think that's also quite a good tool, just to have something in the fridge ready to go, so you're not as tempted to be like, oh, I don't have anything, so takeaway.
Yeah.
Okay, probably another one for you then, Lauren. Strength training. What are good body weight exercises to do when you haven't got any equipment at home?
Well, if you're someone who goes to the gym often, you'll know that body weight exercise will feel like a regression, but I'm guessing that's someone who's asking who maybe isn't so au fait with strength training. So if that's the case, body weight exercises are a great way to start. So, you know, squats, really good. If you're someone who doesn't, I mean, I don't like suggesting things if you're a complete beginner, because I would probably encourage you to either get the help of a professional. You know, people are doing online training at the moment, so if you did want to get some technique pointers, that would be great. Or, you know, there's always YouTube, although that's a little dangerous because you don't know who to trust. But anything really, all your basics, all your boring basics, squats, push-ups. If you can't do push-ups, you can elevate the hands up so you're at an angle that makes it easier for you. I would say tricep dips, but I feel like I see people do these a lot, and I don't love them because they're easy to get wrong. So I would say squats, push-ups. You know, you can find things around your house. If you need a little bit of extra weight, you can put some books in a backpack. You can hold them to do squats. You know, planks, all your general things. I think the thing that's hard at the moment is we probably all know quite a lot of moves. I think even if you're not into fitness, you kind of know squats, push-ups and things. They're just really boring, right? So they're a really good place to start. I'm trying with my clients that I train on Zoom at the moment to make things a little bit more interesting, but I'm not going to sit here and reel off a load of things to you or demonstrate them unless you're into that. So I would just say that squats really good. You know, you can do high knees running in place, not that it's strength training, but just to kind of, you know, break up the strength training movements. But yeah, without equipment, I'm not going to lie, it is tough. I know that people, if you're on Instagram, it would suggest that it's really easy to get a great workout at home. I know just from the lack of motivation I have myself to train within these same four walls every day, it's tough. So yeah, you know, whatever you can do, if you can do kind of like a little 20-minute thing, just write down maybe squats, push-ups, anything like that, crunches if you're into those.
I mean, I am not an expert like yourselves, but you know, I struggle with weight like everybody else and have done all my life, and you know, struggling particularly, you know, during the pandemic. I thought I got myself reasonably under control for a decade, but maybe not. I think sometimes, this is just based on my own experience, we set ourselves too high a goal, you know, and just do a little bit of something and then a little bit of something the next day. And totally. Actually, you do get, not addicted, but you do get into a new rhythm. I can say at the moment that I'm firmly out of my rhythm. And I don't feel the best for it, to be fair. So, you know, today's call has been, you know, sort of really helpful for me as well. But we've got lots of questions coming in. So let me send some of these your way. So perhaps for Steve then, BMI. How important is this, as I am overweight according to my score, but I don't feel overweight? Does bone and muscle density skew the scores?
Yeah, right. So it's a super interesting question. It's a huge question too. So the reason that they have BMI is because BMI is a clinical measurement, right? So often when we think about overweight or being obese, they used to categorize obesity into like obesity, and then there'd be morbid obesity at the end. Nowadays it's obese 1, obese 2, obese 3, and they categorize people into these ways. And the way that they do that is because they want to look at, on a population level, what someone's risk of certain issues might be. So that's the thing. How we feel and then how other people think about us when they look at us and everything else, that's great, that's subjective, but the medical profession needs to keep objective measurements. Now this is based on a population, right? So it's not necessarily that you can just use it as a label, because people are different. Bone mineral density, a lot of people will say that they've got big bones and stuff like that. My bones are heavy. Really, skeletons don't actually change that much. So that's kind of like, there's not that much in it. Muscle mass does. If you're a professional bodybuilder, for example, you'll be, you know, classified as obese when you're clearly not obese. But also 99.9% of the population aren't professional bodybuilders. Very often we're just people who maybe have a little bit more muscle mass than our friend sitting next to us, and therefore we think that BMI is completely out of our realms, where normally it's not that bad in terms of grouping people together and giving us an idea of like where we're at, right? There are other ways to do it as well, body fat percentage, things like that, but that becomes complicated because there's no real consensus on what the numbers should be, and then you have to measure it in a really specific way. So it is a useful number. It's a useful number to have at the back of your mind, right? It is a useful number. You don't have to live and die by it, but it's there to guide the medical profession, and therefore it should also kind of guide us, right? You don't necessarily, it's much more complicated than just aiming for, because people can be within a healthy range as well and still be really super unhealthy. There are lots of different reasons. People with muscle wasting issues, for example, can have a very low BMI because they're a very low weight, but they're still a very unhealthy body composition. So talking to a professional about it is kind of important, rather than just picking the number. But as a general guideline for most people, it's not that bad. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, okay, so we've got quite a few questions and not too much time, so see how many we can get through. So the next one is, does routine with the time of meals help controlling your weight?
Yes, it does. The reason that it does is because you get hungry at the same times that you eat at. Another thing that your body does, again, it thinks you're a caveman, right? So a really good idea for a caveman who might starve is to remind him to eat all the time, right? So if you eat at 9 o'clock in the morning every day, you'll get hungry at that time due to a hormone called ghrelin, which appears in your body telling you to eat at that time. If you eat randomly throughout the day, those signals to your brain to tell you to eat will get mixed up and you'll be hungry all the time. So sticking to a regular amount of meals, sticking to roughly regular meal times does help you maintain and lose weight, because you get hungry then and you don't get hungry at other times. So if you snack randomly and do random eating throughout the day, you're messing with those signals a little bit. That's why I always like routine more than not.
Okay, so we've got someone who always struggles with what to have for lunch. So any suggestions for lunch?
For lunch, okay, so think about the things I mentioned with appetite then. So on the appetite slide, we talked about foods that are higher in protein because that's the most satiating macronutrient. That's the one that makes you eat the less. Things that are high in vegetables, the point being that vegetables fill you up as much as possible without really adding any calories, presuming this person wants weight loss or just wants to maintain their weight. That's the presumption that I'm making. You want to gain weight, it's the opposite to all of these rules. If you want to lose it, eating foods that aren't that processed. So you can see why something like a sandwich, a packet sandwich, is a pretty bad idea generally, because it doesn't have that much protein in it. It's got bread. It's kind of like really processed generally. So that's not always the best idea, even though it's the most convenient option, where you can try and pick your foods a little bit more carefully, right? You don't have to live by these rules all the time, but just sometimes you have to think about it a little bit more. If you can plan ahead, you'll do better.
Someone's asking then, is there a healthy snack to have, you know, when we're sat on the sofa in the evening?
So then it depends. If you want to snack, you know, first, oh God, I'm going to be so annoying now. Firstly, find out the reasons that you're snacking. Is it because you're hungry, or are you bored, or do you always have something when you're sitting down watching the TV in the evening? If you do, that's a habit. It's not necessarily out of hunger. It's just like, I'm going to turn the TV on and my brain's like, oh yeah, okay, we normally have something to eat here. So try not eating anything at all. And if you want to eat something, just think about things that are less processed. So like things like, you know, fruit, that kind of stuff, rather than chocolate, crisps, that kind of thing.
I will say, if you've never tried freezing grapes and eating them, they're delicious. I always say that to my clients in the evening. Freeze grapes, they taste like little sorbets. I mean, that might just be me. I'm a weird little vegan, but freezing grapes, and even with a square of dark chocolate on the side, delicious.
Okay, we've got someone who's got an underactive thyroid, find it difficult to lose weight. Have you got any advice?
So, okay, I'll be really quick. Sorry, Lauren, I'll just take this one really quickly.
More your domain.
The thing about underactive thyroid, people think that that means that none of these rules exist anymore. Everything that I said in terms of energy balance, in terms of energy in versus energy out, it's still exactly the same for people with underactive thyroid. They just might not burn quite as many calories. Their metabolism will slow down a little bit. So they need to think about their food choices a little bit more. Maybe counting calories is something that they need to do. They also need to think about what Lauren said about NEAT and stuff like that. The stuff that is within their control, how much they move around, they can really increase the amount of calories that they burn. So an underactive thyroid, it doesn't mean that it's all over. It does just mean that you have to pay a little bit more attention. So that's just it. How much energy are you using? How many steps are you taking? Start to look at that kind of stuff, start to track that. Maybe start to track the amount of calories that you're eating on a normal day and see if that maintains your weight, and then try reducing them. So just a few little more pinpointy things, but it works exactly the same way. All the rules still apply.
Okay, and just lastly, for yourself, Lauren, how would you recommend getting started with yoga? Is there any particular video you could recommend?
Ooh, any particular video? That's tough for me because obviously I generally do my own thing. I think the problem with yoga that I see a lot is that with all this social media stuff, like I said before, most people who are offering yoga, not most actually, but a lot of people who are offering yoga who are the bigger followed people are offering things that are just, they might call it beginner, but it is not beginner. Even some of the regular postures that we see in yoga are kind of really difficult if you're not in some way hypermobile. So I believe, and I don't quite want to say this because I haven't done any of her stuff, but I do know that I have a friend who follows, I think she's called Yoga with Adrienne. She's on YouTube. I do believe that she is a little bit more on the beginner side. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I teach yoga myself, so I haven't looked at a lot of online people. But the way to get started, honestly, is just try and find a class. There's so many like on YouTube at the moment. Try and find a class that makes you feel capable. So if you try a yoga class and it's beyond your scope, don't think that's you. Most of the time, it's actually at the fault of the teacher who doesn't realize they're selling to a really big audience. So just try out a few different things, a few different yoga flows on YouTube or something. If something's beyond your scope, don't give up. It's not on you. Just try a load of things, and anything that feels like it's giving you a bit of a stretch in your body, but also a little bit of mental relief. Great.
And if there's anybody watching the webinar who has started yoga this year and wants to recommend something to our colleagues, drop Anthony or Jose an email, and we can share that.
Yeah, sorry, I should have come prepared. It's only because I teach that I don't know about all the rest of them.
Some really great questions there. So it'd be interesting if anybody would like us to do a little bit more around the science of weight management, perhaps do a focus group or a clinic like we have on some topics where we've had a lot of interest, please do let us know and we will look to arrange that. In the meantime, thank you very much, Lauren and Steve, for today. Picked up a lot of tips. Hopefully it'll start me into better eating and getting back into a little bit of exercise. So thank you for that. Let's have a look what we've got next week just before we go. So next week we've got a session with Macmillan Cancer Support, our charity partner at Suez. We've got a lovely lady called Julie who's going to be sharing her cancer journey, her story with us. Clearly lots of people are affected by cancer, so Julie and Macmillan have asked me to provide a you know, a heads up that it could be quite an emotional session next week. So, you know, do have a good think about whether it is right for you. But hopefully you want to join us and hear about Julie's story and the work of Macmillan. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for some really great questions today, great engagement, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks, Steve and Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.